The calendar read March 4th, 1945. At 1,340 hours, the atmosphere inside the number 1 Mechanical Transport Training Center in Campbell, Surrey, was thick with the scent of oil and hot coolant. Lying prone on her back beneath the immense chassis of a 3-ton Bedford truck, Second Subaltern Elizabeth Windsor wrestled a wrench against a stubborn bolt. Oil streaked her uniform sleeve, and the engine above dripped fluid from the cracked gasket she was tasked with replacing. Standard, grueling maintenance work mandatory for every Auxiliary Territorial Service, ATS mechanic. Her service number, 230873, offered no shield from the grime. While her fellow trainees knew her simply as Elizabeth or occasionally Windsor during roll call, the global press had already coined the moniker Princess Auto Mechanic. Across the channel, German intelligence officers, intercepting reports of the Crown's involvement, dismissed the story as unbelievable Allied propaganda designed for morale. Yet, the improbable truth stood. The heir presumptive to the British throne, first in the line of succession and future Queen of the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth realms, was fully submerged in engine grease, performing routine mechanical repairs alongside 23 other young women dedicated to keeping Britain's wartime fleet operational. With the repair complete, she tightened the final bolt, sliding out from beneath the dark chassis to stand, wiping her hands on a rag already saturated black with accumulated grime. Her instructor, Sergeant Major Collins, approached. He examined her work with the same unsparing, critical eye he applied to all trainees, ensuring the repair met rigorous military standards. There was no difference, no special treatment. Only a professional assessment of whether the gasket was seated properly. Having confirmed the strict adherence to torque specifications, the final stage of the mechanical overhaul began. Elizabeth, now occupying the driver's seat, engaged the ignition, and the engine caught instantly, settling into the reliable, rhythmic idle of a well-maintained service vehicle. Her subsequent inspection of the repair component confirmed the success of the operation. No telltale leaks, no drips, the gasket holding perfectly under pressure. This was standard work, competently executed, one of perhaps 50 similar repairs she had mastered during her 5 months of intensive training. Yet, the true significance lay not in the technical execution, but in the identity of the mechanic herself. German propaganda ministries, desperate to delegitimize the British war effort, insisted that the sight of British royalty engaging in such manual labor must be a cynical fabrication. This unprecedented decision, the request to serve, had been formalized in February 1945, during the final, brutal year of conflict that had already demanded 5 years of profound sacrifice from the British nation and every family within it. Princess Elizabeth, then 18 years old, had witnessed the complete mobilization of her society. Women had transitioned into essential roles, manufacturing munitions in vast factories, piloting ambulances through the wreckage of nightly bombing raids, operating anti-aircraft batteries defending metropolitan centers, and maintaining vital food production on the nation's farms. They served across every auxiliary force supporting the military establishment, while Elizabeth had contributed through high-profile ceremonial duties, visiting military installations, touring devastated neighborhoods, and broadcasting messages to encourage British youth. She had grown profoundly uncomfortable. Many women her age were performing essential, tangible war work, and Elizabeth sought to move beyond purely symbolic service. She had. It was in the private study at Windsor Castle that Princess Elizabeth presented her formal request to her father, King George VI. The exchange was necessarily brief and utterly direct, dissolving the usual royal formality. She insisted upon joining the Auxiliary Territorial Service, the ATS, not in the symbolic capacity of an honorary colonel or patron, but as a fully enlisted trainee. Her objective was unambiguous: to learn the practical, vital skills of driving and maintaining military vehicles. The king had anticipated this moment. His daughter had raised the issue twice before, and had previously deflected, citing the immense security concerns and potential constitutional complications such a high-profile enlistment might entail. Now, with the Allies closing in on victory, but the war still demanding total national commitment, further refusal felt politically and morally untenable. He warned her of the inevitable institutional resistance. The cabinet will object. So will the Archbishop. Your mother will certainly express concerns about propriety. But the princess's resolve was rooted in the shared duty of her generation. Every woman my age is serving. I cannot, in good conscience, stand apart anymore. George VI studied his determined daughter, recognizing the intelligence and sense of duty that would define her future reign. He understood and fully agreed with her reasoning, but imposed a stringent condition. You will receive no special treatment whatsoever. The same training, the exact same standards, the same expectations as any other recruit. If you cannot meet requirements, you will be discharged. Her immediate acceptance, I wouldn't want any other way, sealed the pact. The necessary arrangements were executed with remarkable discretion. A service number was assigned, a training schedule established, and a uniform issued, standard ATS khaki, properly fitted, yet otherwise identical to kit worn by every other trainee, save for the entirely unobtrusive security detail assigned to her protection. The spring of 1945 saw Britain still heavily reliant on its home front mobilization. On March 1st, Second Subaltern Elizabeth Windsor reported for duty at the No. 1 Mechanical Transport Training Center, embarking on 5 rigorous months of instruction dedicated to vehicle operation, essential maintenance, and complex mechanical repair. This commitment was part of the vast effort marshaled by the Women's Auxiliary Territorial Service, ATS, established in 1938 specifically to fill critical support roles, thereby freeing up thousands of men for active combat duties. By the final year of the war, over 200,000 women were uniformed in the ATS, their service spanning the gamut from crucial clerical administration to the highly specialized operation of anti-aircraft defenses. The mechanical transport section, vital to the logistics of the armed forces, trained these women not just to drive, but to expertly maintain the thousands of trucks, ambulances, and light military vehicles upon which Britain's war machine depended, demanding both technical skill and relentless dedication. Windsor's training cohort comprised 23 other young women drawn from the breadth of Britain, daughters of factory workers, shopkeepers, and farmers alike, ranging in age from 18 to 22. Their educational background spanned from basic state schooling to those who had already commenced university studies. Yet, they were unified by a shared willingness to serve the nation and a deep determination to master the complicated mechanical systems required of them. The instructors, notably Chief Instructor Sergeant Major Collins, maintained an unwavering standard, treating Elizabeth Windsor exactly as they treated every other trainee, firmly, professionally, and with zero tolerance for inadequate performance. Collins established the foundational ground rules on that initial day, stating simply, "You're all the same here." The training regimen was unforgivingly rigorous, adhering to the principle that all candidates, regardless of background, faced the same exacting criteria. Instructors made it clear that those unable to meet the operational requirements or withstand the physical demands would be dismissed. Survival meant earning the qualification as certified Army drivers and mechanics through demonstrable competence, not privilege or favoritism. This impartiality suited Elizabeth precisely. Having explicitly requested the absence of special consideration, she was treated exactly like her peers. Her dedication was immediately tested. During week 3, when her engine timing proved inaccurate, she was compelled to repeat the work until it rigorously met military specifications. Her initial attempt at the critical night driving test ended in failure when she misjudged vehicle clearance under mandated blackout conditions, necessitating a mandatory repeat the following week. When mastering carburetor adjustment proved challenging, she remained after hours, practicing relentlessly until the complex sequence of movements became ingrained muscle memory. Her fellow recruits initially struggled with how to approach the royal presence, but this palpable awkwardness dissipated within 3 days. The intensity of shared physical labor quickly forged a natural camaraderie. To her cohort, she was simply Elizabeth, competent yet approachable, friendly without being familiar, readily offering assistance while never hesitating to accept help when facing a mechanical hurdle. Joan Thompson, a fellow trainee from Manchester, later reflected on the experience in a candid 1995 interview. Thompson vividly recalled the initial apprehension. "First day, we were all terrified about how to act around her. By week 2, she was just another mechanic getting engine grease under her fingernails. She'd ask me about carburetor settings. I'd ask, German intelligence officers, meticulously monitoring British media output, observed Princess Elizabeth's active service in the Auxiliary Territorial Service ATS with a complex mixture of skepticism and grudging acknowledgement. The initial assumption within the Reich was that this demonstration was merely elaborate propaganda, meticulously staged photographs designed to boost Allied morale by feigning the active participation of the heir apparent. Joseph Goebbels' powerful propaganda ministry swiftly prepared official counter-narratives, emphasizing that the images must be fabricated or that Elizabeth was merely playing at service, while inevitably receiving preferential treatment. However, as the weeks progressed and the volume of confirming evidence grew, the German assessment began to shift decisively. Details accumulated regarding her rigorous training schedule, the strict qualification standards she met, and corroborated eyewitness accounts from trainers and fellow recruits, confirming the authenticity of her deployment. Intelligence reports, formally dispatched to the Oberkommando der Wehrmacht, OKW, the German High Command, documented the undeniable reality. British Princess Elizabeth has completed mechanical transport training with the Women's Auxiliary Territorial Service. Multiple independent confirmations indicate genuine service, not ceremonial position, qualified as driver and mechanic per standard requirements. These reports register the development with strategic concern, noting that the incident represented a continuation of the British royal family's policy of visible wartime participation and their steadfast refusal to evacuate, their continued presence in the capital serving as a potent symbol of national resolve. The direct military service of the royal family, even as the Luftwaffe relentlessly bombed London, forged a potent symbol of national unity. This commitment stood in stark opposition to the palpable distance maintained by the German leadership from the suffering of their own civilian population. Wehrmacht intelligence officers, who closely studied British psychology, immediately grasped the profound political implications. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, upon reviewing summaries detailing the royal family's actions, reportedly delivered a chilling assessment. The British king drives through London's ruins to visit his people. His daughter repairs trucks in the army. Meanwhile, our leadership hides in bunkers, giving orders. This is why they will never surrender. Their leaders actually lead. For the architects of German propaganda, Princess Elizabeth's practical service created deeply uncomfortable ideological questions. Nazi doctrine rigidly emphasized hierarchy, racial superiority, and a necessary distance between the leadership and the led. The British monarchy, conversely, was demonstrating a philosophy of shared sacrifice, proving that noble titles did not exempt anyone from the demands of wartime service. Royalty working as mechanics demonstrated strength, not weakness, reinforcing the national resolve. While Joseph Goebbels attempted to launch counter-propaganda emphasizing the vital roles of German women in supporting the Reich, the message proved hollow. It could not compete with the vivid photographs of the British Princess Royal actively maintaining truck engines. The contrast was devastatingly clear. German leadership preached superiority, while remaining insulated from their population's suffering. British leadership quietly served alongside their people. Elizabeth's wartime service exemplified a broader commitment to national resilience. The pattern of British royal participation in the conflict was defined by a steadfast refusal to retreat from danger. While government officials urged relocation to safer sites, King George VI remained resolutely in London throughout the Blitz. Despite Buckingham Palace suffering 9 direct bombings between 1940 and 1945, the monarch insisted on maintaining his residence within the capital, rejecting the notion of safety while his subjects endured aerial bombardment. This commitment was reinforced by the king's daily routine. He toured defensive positions, inspected troops, and maintained a highly visible presence, demonstrating unequivocally that the crown shared the civilian risks. Queen Elizabeth, later revered as the Queen Mother, embodied this shared purpose. She repeatedly refused evacuation, and when officials suggested sending the young princesses to the relative safety of Canada, her response established a definitive wartime posture of the House of Windsor. The children won't leave without me. I won't leave without the king. And the king will never leave. Following the first bombing of Buckingham Palace in September 1940, the Queen famously remarked, "I'm glad we've been bombed. It makes me feel I can look the East in the face." This was a profound recognition that shared suffering created a necessary bond of solidarity. The royal family understood They could not demand endurance from Londoners while remaining safely removed themselves. This ethos extended beyond the immediate family, as Prince Philip, whom Princess Elizabeth would later marry, served with genuine distinction as a Royal Navy officer throughout the conflict. He saw action at the decisive Battle of Cape Matapan, served aboard destroyers in the perilous Mediterranean theater, and participated directly in the North African landings of Operation Torch. The commitment of the monarchy extended far beyond ceremonial duties. It demanded genuine operational risk. The dangers inherent in wartime service were starkly illustrated in 1942 when the king's own brother, the Duke of Kent, was killed after his RAF transport crashed in Scotland during an operational flight. Royal blood offered no immunity from the war's relentless toll. This undeniable pattern, the royal family serving, suffering, and risking alongside their subjects, generated a profound, unifying effect on British morale. It validated the sacrifices demanded of every citizen by demonstrating that even those born of privilege understood that duty required genuine, demonstrable service. Princess Elizabeth's own journey culminated in April 1945. She completed her demanding training, passing both the stringent written examinations and the practical tests with scores that placed her competently in the middle of her cohort, precisely the outcome she had sought. This qualification was meticulously earned through genuine effort, never granted through deference to her rank. The final endorsement came from Sergeant Major Collins, who signed her qualification papers with the same matter-of-fact professionalism reserved for every successful trainee. The document, certifying Second Subaltern Windsor qualifies as Junior Commander Mechanical Transport, confirmed adequate competence in vehicle operation and maintenance, suitable for assignment to a motor transport company. Crucially, the certificate was identical to those issued to every other qualifying trainee, carrying no special notation regarding her royal status, underscoring a standard of equality under service. Upon confirmation that she had met all rigorous requirements, a small, informal celebration marked the successful conclusion of the final examination, amidst cups of tea and simple biscuits. Congratulations circulated among the newly qualified cohort. From the original cohort of 24, Elizabeth was one of only 17 who earned qualification. The 7 who had washed out or been reassigned represented the standard attrition rate inherent to demanding mechanical transport training. ATS colleague Joan Thompson recalled a shared endeavor. We'd worked hard together, helped each other through difficult bits, celebrated when we passed tests. Crucially, Thompson emphasized, at the end, she was just another qualified mechanic. We were proud of that, not because she was princess, but because she'd done the work properly and earned it like everyone else. This period of ATS service generated one of the most potent and enduring symbols of British wartime unity. Its power was not derived from official propaganda or public statements, but from a visual documentation. The simple photograph, which captured royalty competently performing manual, ordinary work without complaint. The symbolism resonated across multiple socio-political strata. It reinforced national unity. If the future queen could engage in manual labor, class distinctions were momentarily superseded by shared national purpose, validating every citizen's contribution. It championed female capability, demonstrating that women could master complex mechanical tasks traditionally sequestered within the male domain, thereby validating the technical contributions of all women during the war effort. Finally, it cemented moral authority, proving that British leadership genuinely practiced the principles of shared sacrifice they espoused publicly. This commitment to shared sacrifice transcended mere abstract ideology. It was a deeply lived, visible reality. It provided a powerful moral contrast to the enemy. While the Nazi leadership remained insulated and distant from the suffering of their population, the British Crown demonstrably shared the privations endured by its subjects. This fundamental difference revealed which system genuinely valued its people. The reverberations of the symbolism extended far beyond the British Isles. Resistance movements across occupied Europe, seeing photographs of the young British princess serving as an army mechanic, recognized that Britain was fighting for democratic principles it was actively practicing. Allied nations noted this powerful symbol approvingly, and even neutral observers acknowledged it as tangible proof of democratic civilization's enduring moral strength. For the British population, Enduring the sixth year of total war, Elizabeth's active service provided essential validation. Their sacrifices, the strict rationing, the continued aerial bombardment, and the grinding uncertainty of victory, were not demanded by a distant elite, but shared by everyone, including those born to the highest privilege. This psychological reassurance was profoundly important. The war finally culminated in victory in Europe on May 8, 1945, V-Day. Princess Elizabeth, still committed to her uniform, requested a singular permission to join the celebrating crowd sweeping through London. The king, recognizing the significance of the moment, granted the request. On the evening of May 8th, Elizabeth and her sister Margaret, accompanied by a small security detail, slipped quietly out of the heavily guarded gates of Buckingham Palace. For a few unforgettable hours, amidst a massive, joyous throng celebrating in the streets, the future queen was anonymous, just another person swept up in the relief and exhilaration of peace. The young princess, still in uniform, celebrated the cessation of the European war on the streets of London. She would later recall that evening as one of the most profoundly memorable of her life, walking miles through the ecstatic crowds, sharing laughter and cheers. Crucially, they were unseen, merely participants in the national catharsis, precisely the immersion she had desired during the years of conflict, to be part of the collective experience rather than separate from it. Although her ATS service concluded shortly after V-Day, its impact endured. When she ascended the throne in 1952, Queen Elizabeth II retained the practical mechanical knowledge gained as a teenage mechanic. This competence occasionally surprised senior officials when she would confidently discuss specific vehicle specifications or diagnose complex engine problems, a testament to the rigorous training she had undergone. More broadly, Elizabeth's wartime contribution established a defining precedent for the British royal family's continued active military participation. Her children and grandchildren would subsequently enter genuine service roles, requiring qualification and demonstrated competence, moving far beyond mere ceremonial positions. This pattern asserted that royal status did not exempt one from service. Privilege demanded genuine contribution, and leadership necessitated participation rather than observation. This ethos of service is perhaps best illuminated by the perspective of those on the opposing side. Among the many anecdotes from Elizabeth's ATS tenure, one involves Mann Schneider, a German soldier captured in April 1945 and held at AP camp in. The former German soldier Yorkshire recalled the profound impact of being shown British newspapers by his guards. The central image featured a photograph of Princess Elizabeth, the heir presumptive, clad in her Auxiliary Territorial Service, ATS, uniform, actively engaged in repairing a truck engine. "We gathered around a photograph in disbelief," remembered Schneider during a 1988 interview. The German guards found their astonishment amusing, explaining matter-of-factly that the princess had been training as a fully qualified mechanic for months, performing manual labor identical to any other ATS member. This revelation was an ideological seismic shock. In the highly stratified Third Reich, leadership families remained rigidly distant and insulated from common work. Here, the future sovereign of Great Britain lay deliberately covered in engine grease, performing demanding physical labor. The devastating summation came from one prisoner. "No wonder we lost. Their princess fixes trucks while our leadership hides in bunkers." That single comment summarized the fundamental fracture within the Nazi system, the chasm between the leadership and the populace, the hollow nature of their superiority propaganda, and the dishonesty about what leadership truly entailed. Elizabeth's genuine act of service taught thousands of German prisoners more about authentic national strength and democratic principle than all their ideology lectures ever could. The image was potent precisely because it was not staged propaganda. The competence was demonstrably real, representing a principle where leadership participates rather than commands from a protected distance. Decades later, as queen, she would sometimes recount the details of her ATS training to visitors, not with boastfulness, but as a simple, defining chapter of her history. The future queen consistently characterized her wartime service not as a temporary obligation, but as the most valuable education she ever received, teaching her more about the nation than any formal instruction could provide. She often articulated that she learned precisely what Britain was fighting for, not the expansion of empire or the pursuit of abstract glory, but the enduring principle that every individual matters, that collective duty is not a philosophical concept, but concrete, essential work requiring genuine physical effort. This profound lesson was absorbed while working directly alongside other women, performing the essential mechanical tasks that kept the armed forces operational. The photographic evidence remaining today is starkly objective. Archived images show young women in grease-stained uniforms, often lying beneath the chassis of military trucks, their hands competent with a wrench, their expressions intensely focused on the task at hand. This was not a performance of the cameras, nor was it mere propaganda. It was genuine, competent service contributing meaningfully to the national effort. The sheer disbelief registered by German generals regarding the idea that a British princess would engage in manual labor, that royalty would work side by side with common citizens, that the heir to the throne would voluntarily acquire engine grease on a uniform, was profoundly telling. Their incredulity revealed the fundamental fragility of an authoritarian system that rigidly separated the leadership from the lived reality of its people. Britain had demonstrated a foundational truth, that genuine national strength is rooted in humility, that authentic leadership demands shared participation, and that a thriving civilization requires universal contribution, irrespective of birthright or inherited status. The sight of the princess working as a mechanic was not a sign of weakness. It was the ultimate demonstration of democratic resilience. The core democratic principle that anchored Britain's defense was not theoretical. It was visibly embodied in action. The gray English morning when Princess Elizabeth completed her rigorous final training, qualifying officially as a competent mechanic, offered profound, unscripted display of this national ethos. This moment, a future queen prepared to continue serving in any necessary capacity, articulated the wartime spirit more clearly than any official propaganda could express. It was a tangible manifestation of shared national effort. Everyone contributing, everyone bound by a common existential labor. The necessity demanded that even princesses repaired trucks, and genuine leadership dictated that they lead this effort by example. The decision that royalty would engage in the messy, physical work of maintaining military transport was incomprehensible to the rigid hierarchies of the Axis powers. The British, however, understood that service must be rendered without exemption, and duty performed competently, regardless of title. In this profound difference lay the key to national endurance, the willingness of leadership to serve alongside the populace rather than command from a distance, earning respect through competence rather than demanding it through rank. The truck engines Elizabeth repaired ran smoothly. The technical qualification she earned was entirely legitimate. The powerful symbolism of her commitment derived its force precisely because it was not merely a gesture. It was real service, real work, and a tangible contribution from someone who could have remained distant, but chose instead to participate fully, a choice that defined Britain's wartime character more eloquently than any speech could.